It's Jerry Gilroy and Owen Sheehan with you here until 10 o'clock this morning. An especially expanded show because so many of you are getting out of bed that little bit later. We decided we would expand the show for an extra half hour. So we're on every morning from 7:30 a.m. all the way through until 10 o'clock. Owen, good morning to you. How are you?
Very well, Ger. How are you?
You know, there's a lot of sports news happening over the last 24 hours or so. This is the next phase of this where everybody who was plotting and conniving in the background is suddenly like, I see a window of opportunity for me here to absolutely rearrange how world sport is organised. I'm thinking of Bernard Laporte and his decision to tell everybody that he's been working alongside Bill Beaumont with coming up with a World Club Cup Championship that's going to be an annual tournament that eradicates the European Cup from the fixture lists. It's like, right, under the cover of the coronavirus epidemic, you are making a land grab for power. And, there's a certain Machiavellian tendency here going on that you can't look at and go, all right, tell us more, Bernard, tell us more.
It's one of the things that perhaps we glossed over the last couple of weeks, that when we considered what might return first, what might actually peek out from the woods when this is over, or perhaps before this is over, we neglected to remember that there is a grotesque level of money involved in sport, which is obviously a great thing if you're a sports fan, because it means that it is going to be the one thing that is COVID-19 proof. And I'm talking about the very top tier of games here. And I'm talking about the fact that we may have Premier League games. We may have a new rugby format created before this thing is out, which would actually be one of the more absurd things. We're seeing from Germany, Bayern Munich and Bundesliga teams back in training yesterday, operating social distancing. And I think perhaps we kind of wrote everything off and said, well, we're not going to see sport for ages. There is too much money in a lot of sport right now for leagues and for organisations to at least not give something a crack. And I think for that reason, we should have been less surprised that there was an agenda tipping along all of a sudden in sport.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not surprised that there was stuff going on in the background. I'm kind of a little bit surprised that people are using now as the opportunity to come out. But at the same time, you know, maybe now is the time for you as a sports administrator or a sports organization to say, look, we are thinking about the future here. We do have a bigger plan to come back in a different way. That is, people are going to say that with everything that's going on, it's unseemly. But you can. I presume every statement starts with with everything that's going on. Obviously, public health is the most important thing here, and that's true. And we kind of have reached a point now where I hope everybody takes that for granted. But with I don't know if you've had a chance to just a brief look at Laporte's plans. He's essentially saying that there would be 4 teams from England, 4 from France, 4 from the Pro 14, 6 from Super Rugby, the Japanese champions and the American champions in a 6-week tournament that's played every single year. And as a in Irish rugby, if the Pro 14 continues the way it is, there'd be a lot of Irish teams involved in that, and that'd be a pretty good competition.
It certainly sounds like it. So explain to us, people who haven't seen this, so it's 6 weeks, almost like as you would have in football or World Cup, but obviously it's an every single year thing involving the richest parties in World Rugby. That's what kind of stuck out to me. And of course, this is instead of the Champions Cup. The Champions Cup is gone, right?
Yeah.
This is the whole idea.
Yeah, he is saying that you would need to kill the Champions Cup to find the time to do this. And obviously here's the thing, right? It's also a stalking horse for completely ripping up the existing calendar, the way it's organised. And maybe you would have a club season, an international club season, an international season, and you might be able to make the seasons coalesce or align in a better way. Have a global simultaneous season so that everybody's at the same level. And I mean, look, I don't know if that's if this is a staging post along the way to that, or if that's what they want. But the idea is exactly as I've outlined: the best teams in each of the leagues around the world coming together and over 6 weeks deciding who's the best club team in the world.
As you say,
the type of thing we could all get behind.
It's certainly a stepping stone, though, isn't it? Like you would say goodbye to rugby as you know it, which a lot of people would say is no bad thing in terms of the club competitions that people have. Like, this would of course, increase your interest on a week-to-week basis. If, for example, you're a Munster fan and Munster are included in this, and they're one of the Pro 14 teams included in this, like that is something that you can surely be like, well, that's a bit better than the thoughts of a trip to Treviso or Ospreys in town, with all due respect. But then you think about it a little bit further, and what does happen to the likes of your Trevisos and your Ospreys, and like it's what about Connacht Rugby, for example? So if you're taking what did you say? How many from the Pro 14, Ger?
Four.
Four. So that's
Yeah.
Leinster, Munster, and
Connacht
who
and
are the other
Ulster.
two? Well, like it's gonna be Glasgow and a Welsh team, isn't it? It's gonna be all three.
Maybe not though. You know, like
Okay, but
there's no guarantee that one of these Wales can't grandfather their team in if they finish fifth or sixth. Like it's just no top four. That's the way it goes. So all of a sudden, those games against Treviso become more important because if you don't make the top four, you're not going to the World Club Championship.
exactly. Sorry, like this is obviously something that is in its infancy, something that coexists with the Pro 14. My fear is that this obviously just becomes a runaway thing, and it is the only thing that a rugby season has. And like maybe that's a better rugby season, and maybe that's how the sport needs to be looking at itself if it actually wants to make the most of its product. Because you sometimes get the sense that it isn't making the most of its product. That you get unbelievable rugby sometimes in the Rugby World Cup, and then you return to I don't know what the level is. It's always a good level when you're watching it in the Pro 14 or in the Champions Cup, but you always feel that there could be more, that perhaps the geography of the game never does it any favors, that you've got these pockets around the world, and when you're playing in the locality, it doesn't actually get the best from the sport. This obviously turns that on its head. It is the entire world coming together to play their best club teams off against one another. And if it's happening every single year, with the exception of World Cup years, of course, like it's a fairly exciting prospect, to say the least.
Yeah, and look, Laporte is somebody who has been in the corridors of power in rugby for really 3 decades at this point. In Classic Game Club that we did, he was the French coach, right, in the year 2000. So obviously before that, he had to rise to power. And then since then, he's been in various roles within the French Rugby Federation. And as he reminds everybody in Media Olympic and the interview that he did, the European Cup is magnificent. I was able to lift the trophy 3 times with Toulon, and I know what it can represent. Pardon me. So, the humble brag in the midst of it all suggested he can kill this thing because he loves it. Like all great Shakespearean heroes, each man kills the thing he loves, as Oscar Wilde would say. He says simply, and you made the point about the money at the start of this. That's all this is about. Let's be frank. The European Cup doesn't generate enough income. If we want to develop this Club World Cup, we have to find dates. Without the Heineken Cup, there are 9 weekends freed up.
Mm. Yeah, that definitely creates a bit of an opening. Like, so you look at the Champions Cup, the Heineken Cup for the last few years, and there has just been the issue that the Premiership and the top 14 clubs don't care enough about it sometimes, and that's obviously to do with finance as well. Like, if this is a more lucrative competition, and that's it. That really is it. And the television money for this lucrative competition is better than the money going to the back pockets of Premiership clubs, for example. That's a game changer. And that's what it comes down to, because right now it's kind of a toss of a coin whether teams focus on the Premiership or whether they focus on the Heineken Cup. Of course, if you've got the squad, you go for both. But it's a very different view to how we would look at it in the Pro 14 and the tradition that still maintains throughout European competition. And I guess that comes down to the depth of competition that you have in the Pro 14 as well.
Essentially, it comes down to relegation. Ultimately, it comes down to relegation. If you are at risk of getting relegated from your league, which is going to be your bread and butter, you are therefore going to focus on that league. If they ring fence the top leagues in England and in France, which they should do, then all of a sudden a competition like this becomes something that you can put some resources aside. The thing is that there are so few teams who would actually qualify for it. So if it's super lucrative to get into, then it becomes a dogfight in those leagues to get into it. Except maybe in the Pro 14, where you would have a team like Leinster, who will obviously always be a dominant force given the size and scale of the market and the monopoly they have on the best young players in the most populous part of the country. So look, I think it's interesting. He's saying it's just a proposal. They need to move forward very quickly. The CRK came out yesterday and poo-pooed the notion, saying, look, our competition is fantastic. It's not going anywhere. We actually believe this could coexist with the European Cup and play it once every 4 years, which is just equally a good idea. So non-Lions years, non-World Cup years, you stick this in, and I mean, maybe that's the staging post here. That's your little way into this. You do have this tournament once every 4 years, and I don't know how you pick the qualification. Is it just on that last season, or is it on whoever wins the European Cup in the previous 4 years? But whatever way you do it.
Like, you talk about ring fencing here. Like, is Laporte, when he dreams up the end goal of this, is he dreaming up a ring fenced Club World Cup?
I mean, maybe. I don't see how that would work. Like, the local competition is the thing that brings people. So if you're a French owner, then you can't have. Look, I mean, I've talked about this before. I think that there should be a 32-team European Super League with conferences and NFL-style playoffs, and just look at how the NFL has worked. And yeah, that is totally ring fenced. There's no in, there's no out. The only way in would be to expand franchises, and the only way you would do that is if there was an absolutely nailed-on, successful franchise ready to go. And look, this as we see, this isn't about the game. This is about money and business and selling satellite dishes or broadband or whatever it is that drives consumption. The game is looked after by the unions and the grassroots, and they're actually kind of different things when it comes down to it. One's an entertainment product, and one is for the benefit of the sport and mental health and society and education and culture and all the things that come with sports policy. This is a bunch of people coming up dreaming of ideas to grow sports and make money. And by sports, I mean business, grow businesses and make money. And you're dead right on. That's why sport is going to come back faster than maybe it should do in many instances.
Yeah, and you're right. You cannot make a case against sport being back on time if we have sport on our televisions, say, in, let's say, 7 to 8 weeks. It is a fact that is probably sport coming back sooner than it should. It does not mean, however, that it won't have benefits to coming back, and the importance that it will place, that will have in people's lives. Like, if you're a German football fan and you have Bundesliga back in your television while this pandemic is currently wreaking havoc throughout the continent, that is something that you can gain a lot of hope from. Same with basketball fans in the United States. That's been something that's been mentioned that potentially could return soon as well. Yes, next month is too soon, but it doesn't mean it won't have huge benefits as well to those who'll be sitting at home watching it.